Welcome to the Gen Z Money Podcast, episode 4. Getting to that financial independence, it's not about retiring early. It's not about quitting your job. It's not about never working again, but it's about having the option to never have to work again. And as long as you have that option, you're in control. You're in control of your schedule. You're in control of your life. And now instead of fitting your life around work, you can fit your work around your life. That's what compound interest gets you guys.
Even if my jokes aren't funny, my tongue tied up on it, and I don't need to speak a single word, 'cause you got me
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Gen Z Money Podcast, where we've turned financial peace from a theory to your reality. I'm your host, James Bowman, and today we are going to be discussing the power of compound interest. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard about compound interest. You have a general idea, but I don't think many people grasp what compound interest is. So for a little bit of context, I'm going to throw a quick little bit of information out there. What we're going to be talking about today is something called an index fund. And I'm going to be using that as an example to not only explain compound interest, but just to put some substance behind it. But first, I'm going to tell you what an index fund is. And we'll have plenty of episodes about different mutual funds, different index funds going into that. But just to give you a little context, what an index fund is, it's a collection of company stock, and it's all managed by passively. So what that means is, let's say, for example, we're going to use the S&P 500 index fund for this. What that is the top 500 companies in the United States. Someone went ahead and they put together all 500 companies, and you can buy one share of stock and own a percentage of all 500 companies. What does this do? This is a form of diversification. So, if you put your money into one stock and the price goes down, then your portfolio goes down. And if you put money in one stock and the price goes up, then your portfolio goes up. But when you own an index fund, it is essentially you're owning 500 different companies in one stock. So if the majority of them go up, your portfolio goes up. If the majority goes down, your portfolio also goes down. And that's a rough definition of an index fund. You can always look it up yourself. And there's tons of different index funds that track tons of different things. But just for this episode, I'm going to be talking about the S&P 500, which I personally invest in. And so that's what we're going to be using for an example. So let's just to give you guys a little bit of context. The S&P 500 index fund has averaged 11% per year for the last 33 years, at least the fund that I invest in. So 11% every year for 33 years. What does that mean? So that means every single year, if you put a dollar amount in, it's going to go up 11% every year. Now, past performance of the market does not explain what's going to happen in the future. No one knows. No one can predict the market. So we're just going to go off of what has happened in the last 33 years. So in the show notes, I'm going to provide you guys a link to a compound interest calculator. Here's why. As humans, our brain is taught to think linear. 1 + 1 = 2. 2 + 2 = 4. It's all linear. 4 × 4 = 16. When you talk about compound interest, you go from thinking linear to exponential. I'll say that again. You go from thinking linear to exponential growth. And our brain is not made to naturally think that way. And so when you play around with this calculator that I'm going to link to in the show notes, you're going to be amazed. I'm telling you, when I found this out, it was a part of my life just changing. So I'm going to give you some real life examples that I used. I just threw them in the calculator and just to do this experiment. So what I did was I used the annual return of 11% for the last 33 years. Since that's the average, that's what I put into the calculator. So did you know that if you invest $1 a day for 33 years, at the end of that 33 years, you will have $111,000. So that's $365 a year for 33 years. I'm sure anyone on this earth can sacrifice to just save $1 a day. Okay. When you break that down, after the 33 years, you would have put in about $12,000 of your own money. The other $99,000 is interest that you earned. That 11% per year generated you $99,000 over the course of 33 years. So for example, if you start at age 20, just putting $1 a day away until you're 53, you're going to have $111,000. That's the power of compound interest. Now, let's do another example. This is my favorite. This is my favorite example. Let's say you put $500 a month away for 33 years. After 33 years, you will have $1.8 million in your investment account. 200,000 of that is money you put in. So over 33 years, saving $500, you would have put in $200,000. The other $1.6 million that's in the account is all interest. That's the power of compound interest. And when you go and play with this calculator, what I think you should really do is just play with the years. Let's just say you put in $500 a month for 20 years, and then do 21 years, and then do 23 years. And you're going to see the exponential growth that I'm talking about. Just go in there 5 minutes, put in whatever you think you can afford out of your budget a month, and just play with the years. Say if I started today and I started investing until 65, what would I have? And it's going to blow your mind, especially if you do not understand the power of compound growth. So let me give you another real life example. Let's say you're 20 years old and you decide, you know what? I'm going to bust my butt from age 20 to 25. And I'm going to save $10,000 a year. I'm going to put it in this investment account. I'm going to put it in an index fund, and I'm just going to let it grow. At age 25, you will never put another dollar in this account. So over that 5 years, you would have saved a total of $50,000. If you left that alone until age 65, you never put another dollar in, that $50,000 that you put in would now be $1 million. It's that simple. I mean, and it's ridiculous because this is what the wealthy do. This is how they create generational wealth. They'll have a baby born. They'll open up an account for the child. They'll throw in $50,000. And by the time that child reaches 65, they will have multi-million dollars in that investment account that they can use. This is what the wealthy do. They understand the market. And to be quite honest with you, putting your money in an S&P 500 index fund is kind of like betting on America. Do you think in the next 50 years, America will be around? Do you think in the next 50 years, companies would have grown? If we look at the last 50 years, we can tell America has grown significantly. So I always just look back at the past, see what's happened in the past, and that dictates how I'm going to continue in the future. I don't think America is just going to drop off the map. Therefore, it's a safe bet that the money's going to grow. Can it drop to zero? Absolutely. But I guarantee you, if the top 500 companies in the United States all went bankrupt, we would have much, much, much different problems than to worry about an investment account. We're talking martial law, an asteroid hitting the planet. I mean, it would have to be mayhem for all 500 of the biggest companies in the United States going to zero, going bankrupt, closing down. And we're talking about companies like Apple, Facebook, I mean, Chevy, Ford, like the big guys. Like, I don't think we're just going to stop taking cars anywhere. So the odds of these companies losing over the next 50 years, yes, one or two may go bankrupt. Look at Toys R Us recently. It went bankrupt, but I'm not sure if it was even in the S&P 500. But just because one company goes bankrupt, you have 499 other companies that will still produce positive return. And that's why index funds are so powerful, because you're not just betting on one company. I know back in the day, it was before my time, there was a company called Enron. And Enron went bankrupt super quickly. Anybody who owned Enron stock, anybody who was an employee and had a pension with them, completely lost all of their retirement. They lost all of their money because of one company bankrupt. That's why index funds are so powerful, because one company can go bankrupt. 5 can go bankrupt. 100 can go bankrupt, and you still have 400 other companies that are going to perform positively. And even if one goes bankrupt, they're just going to replace it with the next one in line that isn't. So now you're going to have additional positive. So I say all this to say, unless you're betting on America ceasing to exist in the future when it's time for you to start using this money you stored away, then it's okay. Like, in my opinion, like, just set it and forget it. The thing is, if you have to invest money to grow like this, compounding and exponential growth, you have to invest money you don't need, because in the day by day, the market goes up, the market goes down. In the beginning of 2020 in March, the market tanked 15%, 20%. So if you put in $1,000 and it tanked 20%, your 1,000 just turned 800. You just lost $200 in an instant. And yes, it stings, but realizing you don't need that money and you just want that money to grow in the long run, in the next 50 years, I'm 100%. The market has never not rebounded. The market has always reached new highs. Every time there's a dip, there's always a recovery. So investing this money for the long term. I remember in a few episodes ago, I talked about what you do today. What is it going to mean to you in 10 years? What is it going to mean to you in 20 years? What is it going to mean to you in 30 years? The decisions you make today. Buying that, $20,000 car, it's going to make you happy today. But in 20 years, you're probably not even going to remember you own the car. But if you put $20,000 into an investment account and you forget about it, in 20 years, you're going to look at that account and it's going to be ridiculous. The exponential growth is just going to be ridiculous. The compounding interest is just going to blow you away. Now, you may be saying, okay, James, well, how do I get in on this? And I'm going to tell you. There are many different ways to invest, especially in the stock market. And I'm only talking about the stock market right now. I'm not going to be talking about real estate. I'm just going to be talking about the stock market. So there are many different accounts with many different brokerages that you can open up. It's kind of like opening up a checking account, opening up a savings account, except you can invest. So there are different brokerages like Fidelity, Vanguard, Charles Schwab. A lot of you guys probably know the app Robinhood. They are a brokerage. And there's hundreds of them, thousands of them, I'm sure, across the world. And in my opinion, it doesn't matter which one you use in the long run, because you're in control of your money. You're not opening the account and giving away control. You're in control of the money. So if you lose it, you're not looking around at an investment advisor to say, oh, he lost my money. If you lose your money, it's on you. Okay. I want you to be in control. Yes, they can advise you, but as an advisor, they're not telling you what to do with your money. Neither am I. Don't do it just because I said go do it. You do your own research. The point of this episode is because a lot of people don't know what question to ask. They don't know to ask what is an index fund. They don't know to ask what is compound interest. So I just want to get the conversation started. Go home, ask your spouse, babe, have you heard of compound interest? Or, babe, are you invested in the stock market? Like, I heard something today about compound interest and it was really interesting. Maybe you should come play with this on this calculator with me. But I'm getting off on a tangent. So there's hundreds, thousands of different brokerages. Just find one that complements you. If you want a brokerage near you that you can go into, sit down, talk to someone in person, you can do that. I personally do all of my investing through Fidelity. Okay. Now there are different types of accounts. There's a brokerage account, which is you're investing after tax dollars. As it grows, you're paying taxes on it. And when you remove it, then you get taxed also. Unless, I'm sorry, as it grows, if you sell or if funds in the index fund sell, you have to pay taxes as it grows. The next and most important account I'm going to talk about is the Roth IRA. So IRA stands for Individual Retirement Account. It comes with its limitations. You can look up the limitations, but I want to say if you make over $145,000 a year as a single individual, you cannot contribute directly to a Roth IRA. And if you're married, I think it's $300,000. Don't quote me on those numbers. You can always look that up specifically. If your income is, I'd say, above $100,000, just look that up to make sure you qualify. But what we really want to look at is the word in front of it, Roth. What does Roth mean? Roth means after tax, which means you pay taxes on your income and you put the money in the account. The money, while it's in that account, it will grow 100% tax-free. And when you take it out of the account, you no longer have to pay taxes. So, for example, the other IRA option is a traditional IRA, which I'm going to give you examples of both, but essentially it's before tax dollars going into the account, it grows tax-free. And then when you remove it, you pay taxes. So I'm going to give you examples of the difference between a Roth IRA and a traditional IRA. Both have limits of $6,000 per year this year in 2021 if you're under the age of 59 and a half, and if you're above the age of 59, or I'm sorry, not 59, 50. If you're above the age of 50, the max contribution is $7,000 a year. So let's say me, James, I make $50,000 a year and I put $6,000 into my Roth IRA. This year, I will pay taxes on $50,000. The money goes in, it's going to be tax-free. And let's say after I retire at age 65, I start taking money out of this account. And let's say I take out $50,000 a year, I pay no taxes on that $50,000 at the time of retirement. For a traditional IRA, let's say James makes $50,000 a year. I put $6,000 into my traditional IRA. That means this year that I put the $6,000 in, I'm only going to pay taxes on $44,000, which of course is 50 minus the 6 I put in, because they do not tax that money as it goes in. It's going to grow tax-free all my life. And at the time of retirement, let's say I take out $50,000 a year out of that account. I now pay taxes on that $50,000 a year. Here's why I personally choose a Roth IRA over a traditional IRA. Is because I don't know what taxes are going to be in 40 years. I can't predict it. The government is unpredictable. Taxes could be 90% of your income. They could be 3% of your income. I don't know. I know what today's taxes is, so I'd rather use the information today in order to dictate my future. Therefore, I choose the Roth. I'll go ahead, I'll give up the taxes now, but when I retire, I will pay no taxes on the money that has grown in this account. Now, those two you can open up at any brokerage, anytime, and that's it. They have the income limitations that you can look up on your own. But now we're going to talk about something that's much known for you guys, which is a 401k and a Roth 401k. 401k is offered through your employer. You can contribute up to $19,500 a year. And the 401k has the same rules as the traditional IRA, except it has to be come out of your paycheck. You can't contribute from your bank account to your 401k. It's got to be a payroll deduction. And the Roth 401k acts the same as a Roth IRA. The difference is your company can choose to match your 401k contributions. A lot of companies have different guidelines on this. They might match 5%, 2%. They might match half of what you contribute. But regardless, it's always the better option to contribute up to your employer match. You can always contact your HR department and they'll be able to let you know what that number is. They'll help you set up the account and they'll help you contribute the right amounts. Just make sure, of course, you're not over contributing to these. And they work exactly the same. The Roth will go in, you'll go ahead and pay taxes on it today. And when you go to retire, when you pull the money out, it will not be taxed. Same thing with the 401k and traditional. You will not pay taxes on it today, but when you go to retire, you will pay taxes on it. With that being said, these are the 4 most common accounts that I choose to go with, and here's why. As I said before, when investing in the market, you should not invest money that you need within the next 5 years. So if you know you're going to be buying a house in the next 3 years, do not put that money, do not invest it in the market, because we don't know what the market's going to do within the next 3 years. We can educated guess what it's going to do over a 50-year span, but no one can guess what it's going to do over a 3-year span. With these accounts, once the money goes in, if you withdraw the money, each account has its own restrictions. I'm not going to get too much into it, but once you put the money in, if you remove it, you will be heavily penalized by the IRS. I'm not going to get into all the penalties this podcast, but the point is you're going to be heavily penalized, which incentivizes you to just leave the money in. Okay, leave it in. If the market goes down 20%, just let it go, because if you pull it out, the IRS is going to be taking lots from it. Minimum 30% off the bat they're taking. So if you pull out $1,000, they're taking 300 of it, you're left with 700. So that's why these accounts are so powerful, to stop people from making withdrawals. Of course, you can do loans and stuff out of these accounts, but again, I'm not going to go into the specifics of each account. I'm just trying to get the compound interest going for you guys and where to do it. So a big misconception when you invest in these accounts is that when people deposit the money into the account and they never invest it. That's the biggest issue that people have. The IRA is not an investment itself. It is just the car that the money is traveling in. Okay, that's it. And the IRS says, okay, we're not going to tax that car. We're going to tax all the other cars, but that one we're not going to tax. So once you deposit the money into the account, you have to pick the investment that you want to buy. You can always contact your brokerage. They can be able to help you out. If you know what you want to buy, you can always search the investment through your brokerage and things like that and pick your own investments. But the point is, just because you deposit money into the account doesn't mean that it's actually being invested. And I'm going to give you an example of this. So the military, when I was in the military, they had an account called a TSP. And the TSP is equivalent to the 401k. So they're the same thing, just different names. And an article came out that 97% of service members that contributed to their TSP, that contributed to their 401k, had their money in the G Fund. What the G Fund is it's just government securities that essentially match inflation. So you can expect to earn anywhere from 2% to 4% a year on these investments. Anybody who knows investments, I just told you that you can get 11% in the S&P 500. So why would you settle for 2% up to 4%? And the reason is people were depositing money into their TSP, but they were not investing it. So when they deposited it, it defaulted to the G fund. So that told me that 97% of active duty service members were not logging into the account and actually investing the money. They were putting it in there and they were forgetting about it, and it was defaulting to the G fund. And I literally went around work and I'm like, guys, come on, let's pull up your TSP. I'm going to show you where your money is, and I'm going to tell you where it could be. I'm just going to, and I was just teaching them that they thought, okay, well, my money's going in there, but it's not being invested properly. And a lot of 401ks do that. A lot of the IRA, it doesn't invest it in anything until you go in and do it. So just remember, when you're putting money into these accounts, and it's with any account, it's with your brokerage account. If you put money in, but you never buy any investments, any stocks, any bonds, any index funds, if you buy nothing, the money is just going to sit there. So it's really, really important that not only you set up the account properly, that you know your maximums, you don't pull the money out, and you actually invest it once it's in the account. So what does that mean for you guys? That means that now the money's in the account. Well, I'm just going to be very blunt. If you're not investing into your retirement and you're relying on Social Security or your employer or anybody other than yourself, then I think that you should probably reevaluate your financial situation. I'm a big proponent on I don't rely on anyone else. No one else is going to look out for me the way I do. So that means 65-year-old James, I might have kids that might look out for me. But I might not. And it might just be me. And so I have control over my future, which means I need to start for retirement today. So I was able to start for retirement at 20 years old, thankfully. And now between 20 and 45, all I'm doing is consistently monthly putting money away in these different accounts, and I'm forgetting about it. I'm letting it grow. Yeah, it might not look snappy now, putting $500 into my IRA every month, but in 65 years, when there's multi-million dollars in there and I can finally pull from it, that's when I'm going to be thankful. That's delayed gratification. And it's going to put me in a much better spot rather than just trying to rely on the government to take care of me with Social Security and things like that. So I highly suggest everyone start retirement today. If you think you can't afford to put, let's just say $50 a month into an account and just invest it and let it grow, leave it alone, then you really need to look at your budget, look at your monthly spending, and start cutting some things back. If it means you can't watch Netflix anymore, or you have to cancel if you have to cancel your gym membership and start working out at home or outside, then your 65-year-old self they're gonna forgive you for making those sacrifices, and they're gonna thank you. You're gonna be looking back and thanking God or whoever you pray to that you made the choice today. As I said, $1 a day for 30 years and you have $111,000. Okay. And 111 is a lot better than zero. And that's what a lot of people end up with in retirement. They work for 65 years or they work until they're 65 and they have nothing to show for it. So I don't want that for you guys. I want you guys to build wealth. Yes, this is very slow. It's consistent. And let's be honest, if you plan on retiring before 65, then you're going to have to put more money away. But doing something now, most people are not, is better than doing nothing. So James, what should I do today? My number one recommendation for everyone who's employed is to go to your HR department, open up a 401k, and contribute up to the 401k match. So a lot of companies have different matches. Some do 3%, some do 5%, some do, crazy amounts, but contribute up to that. Because if you put in $100 and they put in $100, you now just made 100% on your money. There's nowhere else in the world that you're going to make 100% return immediately, guaranteed, no matter what. So that is the absolute minimum, or that's what I would call the minimum. I understand that putting this into effect is a lot harder than I make it sound, finding the money in your budget, but doing this is you're never going to see the money, and you just have to adjust to your new paycheck. If your paycheck comes back and you have $100 less dollars, you just have to adjust your budget. But I'm telling you, it's gonna suck. It might suck for the first 3 months or 6 months, but 65-year-old James is gonna be praising the ground that 25-year-old James walked on because I made those sacrifices. It's a lot easier to make those sacrifices when you're young rather than when you're old. I mean, that's just a fact of the matter. You can get away with being a 25-year-old eating ramen noodles 3 times a week for dinner. You can't do that at 65. The sodium is going to stop your heart. So it's a lot easier to make those sacrifices up front, because when you look back, you're going to be thanking yourself. So let's just say you're able to do that and you have a little bit extra money left over. What I suggest is, after you've received your match from your company, all of your extra money should be going towards your debts, your high interest debts, whether it's personal loans, credit cards, payday lenders, everything. Here's why. Most of those debts are 20% or more. Some are up to 30%. Okay. And to be quite honest with you, there is no point investing and earning 10% when the money that you've already borrowed from credit cards and things like that, if they're charging you 20%, you're losing 10% every single year on your money. So, and the thing is, that 10% from the market, that's the market average. So let's just say the market returns a negative 20% this year. That 20% that the bank has charged you on your credit card, that is fixed. That is not going anywhere. It's not. So now, instead of being 10% behind, now you're 30% behind. So that's why getting out of debt, at least mostly consumer debt that's at high interest, anything, I'd say anything above 5%, honestly, is golden, because since the inception of the S&P 500, it's averaged about 8% a year. So, anything close to 8% interest has got to go, because there's no point in putting money in your right pocket to save it and the bank is taking money out of your left pocket. It just does it. It's redundant, and you're just going to be a mouse running in a wheel. You're never going to go forward. You might never go backwards, but you're never going to go forward. And that's how you get stuck in that, living paycheck to paycheck, never making any progress. So we need to get out of that habit, especially our generation, because once you kick that habit early, you can show your children that they never have to get into that habit. And I understand not everyone is going to be able to break the habit, but we got to start somewhere. And that's what this podcast is about. It's not about judging you on where you are or what you've done in the past. I don't care if you got a car loan. I don't care if you went bankrupt. I don't care if you got foreclosed on. I don't care if you have 30 things in collections. I care about, what are you doing today in order to make your future better. If you're paying off your car loan, that's good. If you're starting to pay off those little collection things, 65-year-old, James doesn't want to pay collections that 20-year-old James left uncollected. So you have got to pay off all these high interest debts. They come with penalties out the butt. I mean, there's no point in investing your money when the bank is taking it from you, or judgments are taking it from you, or anything like that. So after that, let's just say you got rid of all your high interest debt, anything over 5%. Let's say you got a 3% car loan and you got a 3% mortgage. I'm not too worried about those, to be honest with you, personally. Some people may disagree, but it is what it is. What do I do next, James? Well, then I would go ahead. You've already got your company match going. Go ahead and open up a Roth IRA if you're able to, and max it out. That's $6,000 a year. If you have $6,000 a year extra, go ahead, max that out. Then there are other accounts available to people, depending on your profession, depending on your if you sit down and talk to a financial advisor, they'll be able to explain your options for different vehicles to invest in, because it's super easy to just open up a brokerage account. But you have to understand, over the human life, the thing Americans pay the most for, it's not housing, it's not healthcare, it's not transportation, it's none of that. Our biggest expense in life is taxes. You will pay more taxes in your lifetime than any other expense, period. Not even close. With that being said, what the wealthy do, which a lot of people shame them for, but I'm going to be honest, I think I can spend my money more efficiently than the government can. That's what wealthy people understand. I'd rather give $10,000 to a, I'd rather donate it to a nonprofit that I know will use that $10,000 more efficiently than our government. I could get flack for saying that. I, I, I don't really care at this point. With that being said, you want to take advantage of all of your tax advantaged accounts before you resort to a brokerage account. There are things like your IRAs, your HSA, which is a health savings account that you might be eligible for depending on what kind of insurance you have. You have your 401k, you have your TSP if you're in the military. Some teachers they have a thing called a 403b. And so all of these different things are available to different people depending on different reasons. And therefore, you should explore all of the options that you have in front of you to figure out, how much money can I stash away before I have to start paying the government. The less money I get to pay the government and the more I get to keep for myself and my children, and I can pass on to my children's children, that's at least that's the most beneficial thing that I've seen so far. And there's also things for like saving for college, a 529 plan. All of these are different tax advantage accounts. I mean, you can Google all these things I've said. Like I said, I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole with each account. But the point is, you want your money growing and you want the government's hands off of your money. Let it grow in peace. Let it grow for your children in peace. You're not, at some point, you're not investing for yourself. You're investing for your future and generations. So make sure you're taking advantage of all these tax advantage accounts. Maybe go sit down and talk to a financial planner, a financial advisor. Maybe they will be able to show you options that you don't know. And I will just say one thing: if any of them tell you to do a whole life insurance policy to invest your money, leave their office. I'm not going to go into it on this podcast, but one thing: never mix your investments and your insurance. They don't go together. There's people scheming. They make a lot of money off of that. Just don't do it. But we're going to go into that, I promise you, on future episodes. But with that being said, I think I've covered everything. Mainly, I really wanted to hit on compound interest, because that's the one that people don't really understand. They don't understand the compounding effect. You think if I earn 10% on a dollar, it turns to 1.1. If I earn another 10%, it doesn't go to 1.2. It goes to 1.21. So it's exponential growth. And if you spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes, sit your spouse down or even your parents, and go through this and come up with a game plan that fits your finances, see what you can sacrifice, your 65-year-old self is going to be so grateful. And that's who you're working for today. Like, you're not working for YOLO. You only live once. Enjoy the moment while it's here. I don't believe in that. Some people do. I don't personally, but I believe in building generational wealth. And my grandkids are going to remember my name because I'm going to leave their kids stuff. And you can call me greedy. You can call me whatever bad name, and wealthy people are terrible. But at the end of the day, as I said before, building wealth gives you options. And I'm not building options just for myself. I'm building options for every generation that comes after me. And if you can't at least respect that, then you might be on the wrong podcast, but I think everybody on this earth deserves options. And that's what compound interest gives you. It gives you options. Speaking of options, there is a group of people out there that follow a lifestyle, and it's called the FIRE movement. FIRE stands for Financially Independent Retire Early. And I'm not going to get too far into it, but essentially it's people that decided, you know what, for our earlier years in life, what we're going to do is we're going to live on a super small amount, enough to get by. We're not going to starve the children, but we're also not going to be buying them steaks. And we're going to invest that. And we're going to try and get to our retirement number, because retirement number is not an age. It's the amount of money your assets produces. That's your retirement number. And their goal in life is to try to get to that number as soon as possible. A lot of people think that number is 65, but that number can be age whatever you want to. It's whenever you've accumulated enough assets to live off of. So if your assets are producing income, for example, real estate, or let's just say, it costs you $50,000 a year to live, and you have $500,000 in your investment account. If it makes 10%, 10% of 500,000 is 50,000. That means you can live off of the interest alone, and your principal will never go down. That's an option. What does that mean? That means you no longer have to go to work to support yourself. You get to choose, like, look, I'm going to take the day off because my daughter's sick. And if your boss goes, well, hey, if you don't come in today, you're fired. You can look him in his eyes and say, okay, like, I accept that. Here's my 2-week notice. Like, I'm not coming in. That's the options that I want to have. And of course, I don't have that right now, but I will. That's the options wealth provides you. You no longer have to work a job you don't want to work. You can follow your dreams, do whatever you want. Once you have assets paying you and you're living off the income they create, you can do whatever you want. You can become an artist. You can become a musician. You can follow those dreams you never thought you could. All those things that don't pay much, or don't pay much for a long time until you start making money. For example, podcasting. You don't make money, but at least in the beginning, and I need assets that pay me. That's why I do real estate. That's why I invest in the markets. And so getting to that financial independence, it's not about retiring early. It's not about quitting your job. It's not about never working again, but it's about having the option to never have to work again. And as long as you have that option, you're in control. You're in control of your schedule. You're in control of your life. And now, instead of fitting your life around work, you can fit your work around your life. That's what compound interest gets you, guys. That's what we all strive to get to. But I'm going to wrap it up on that note. Like I said, I'm going to provide a link to the compound interest calculator. Play around with the monthly contributions, play around with the interest rate, and play around with the years that it's going to be in that retirement. And yeah, just play around with it, man. Get creative. Look at your budget and say, okay, if we strip this down to bare bones for 1 year, how much could we stash away? And what would that stash grow to? Just play around with it, man. It's going to blow your mind, especially if the human mind is it's not supposed to think in exponentials. It's supposed to think linearly. I think that's a word. In linear form. That's what our brain thinks in. So doing that experiment and really playing around with it will really open up your mind to what is possible. It's no longer impossible to become a millionaire. It's just, how much money do I have to stash away to do it? You don't have to save $1 million to be a millionaire. If you take 5 years and you save $50,000, it'll get there in 33 years, or however many years it takes. But without further ado, guys, I'm your host, James Bowman, and please remember you're only as secure as your ability to perform. So spend your life accumulating assets that can perform for you. Peace out, guys.
Even if my jokes aren't funny, my tongue tied